Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Eastern Shore Talk, your podcast for all things self-care and movies. If this is your first time tuning in, we're glad to have you. Welcome. We are on episode 56. I'm Jay Watson,
And I'm Kathy Castle.
and Kathy and I are joined this week by special guest Katharine Petzold, and we're going to talk couples and relationships and all those good, juicy things that we all have dealt with or are dealing with currently. And normally, Kath and I would do a check-in, but I'm going to do a little. We're going to skip that and save time for Catherine. But I'm going to just do a little venting real quick for about a couple minutes, and then
you have me scared.
Catherine.
What are we venting about?
Intrigued.
Yeah.
So, all right, Kathy, as you know, and listeners who've been listening for a while, I found the Lord about 8 or 9 years ago, and it's been a very important and vital part of my peace and my overall wellness and health. And I had not actually gone in person to church for a while. I'd been watching online. And it's because as I've talked about before, Kathy, I have a lot of kind of social anxiety with large groups where I'm kind of expected to socialize. So even when I was going regularly, I was only going every other week because of that. It can be an overwhelming experience for me. So I think because of it's a double-edged sword. There have been some folks that I've connected with through the podcast, people that I've had to have conversations with prior to them coming on as guests and getting to know them to see if it was a fit for the podcast and that sort of thing. And I'm very grateful that I've been able to talk to these folks, like-minded people, and it's been a blessing in that regard. But I kind of am one who I have like a limit on my socialness, and after it gets to that limit, I am Kathy's unlimited. I have very low limit.
Jay even gets tired of me.
And I get to that point, and I just felt in person socially overwhelmed. So I was like, and I'd only planned on taking a Sunday or two off, and that turned into, I don't know, maybe 2 months where I didn't go in person. I was still watching online, so I was still worshiping, just not in person. So yesterday I said, I really need to go back and start going again, even if it's every other week in person. And I walked in and I just felt refreshed, and I felt like I didn't feel uncomfortable or weird or awkward. I still did the sit down and don't stand up when they say, okay, take a minute to meet your neighbors or whatever. I'm never gonna be that person ever. But it was good. I was glad I went. It was a really good service. Ran into a couple folks that I hadn't talked to for a while, so that was always good. And it just I could feel myself just feel more refreshed and more comfortable because I had taken some time away. Although I probably took more than I really needed to. It's kind of one of those things, once you kind of get used to being away, it's harder to go back. I say that with the gym all the time.
Anything. Yeah.
Just
work.
The longer you're away, the harder it is to go back. So
yeah,
it was nice to go back in person, and it was a really good service. And it's funny, I've been running into our pastor. He's now a member of Hearthstone Gym, so I see him all the time. So of course he was one of the first people that came over to me, and we talked about the gym and that kind of thing. So it was just nice to get back in there and kind of know. And as I'm sitting there, I'm kind of processing. My mind is running constantly, Kathy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I stayed away because I was overwhelmed, but I'm glad I'm back. And so I'm like, I'm already planning, like, okay, what am I going to do the next time? What am I going to do if I have to do that next time? What am I going to do to not be away for so long in person? So, I just wanted to kind of share that kind of learning moment and realization.
Oh, I thought you were going to complain.
No. This was just a kind of a learning generally.
See where my mind went? I went to, okay, he's got a major complaint.
No.
I got it.
No, I was just venting a learning moment. So yeah.
There's a good vent. Well, good. Maybe you're getting more people-y.
That's pushing it.
I'm pushing it. Okay.
I am more people-y by far, but it's the big groups where there's this. And look, churches like it.
So a concert is out.
See, I think I would be more comfortable at a concert than I would at church because
You don't have to talk.
at church there's kind of a general idea you're supposed to be talking to people. Where
Mhm.
at a concert, it's all strangers except if you go there with a group of people. So there's really no expectation. It's the expectation of being social. Although I don't like being all jammed in close together. I don't want to sit next to anybody I don't know. You know that whole thing, Kathy. So
No, and I still have a goal to sit in the seat next to you and make you uncomfortable through a movie.
That's such a nice goal.
Only a good
she's
friend
just
would do
mad
that.
because I don't. Because see, Kathy
Only
wants
a
to
good
talk the
friend.
entire time,
You
and
don't
I
know
don't want
that.
to talk
That's an
during the
assumption.
movie.
That's an assumption. All right, see, this is relationship stuff. We're
No, that
that,
would dovetail right into it.
that is an assumption you just made.
I'll just say this, Catherine. There have been times where I've been at the movies and Kathy and her family have been to the movies and she's 4 rows in front of me and she's trying to talk to me from 4 rows in front of me.
Before the movie started.
Once you go through the door, all the social things go out the
Oh, I
window.
didn't know the rules. Okay, I didn't know the
It
rules.
tells you on the screen, Kathy,
The
don't
movie
talk
didn't
anymore.
start. When the movie starts, that's when that goes into
Let's just say Kathy and I are on opposite ends of the social spectrum.
play.
They say every extrovert has to adopt an introvert.
There you
Yeah.
go. There you go. You're adopted officially.
I think every introvert needs to talk some sense into every super extrovert. She's not an extrovert. There's not a word for hers yet. She's above the extrovert line.
Oh my
She
god.
goes on trips. Every trip, I think Kathy just plans trips to meet strange people. She doesn't go to be with her family away from work. She just goes, Marty, where can we meet the coolest strange people?
I love that. It sounds adventurous.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good word to put it.
one of my sons is getting married in June. Oh my gosh, we are in the wrong date. And I swear we have people from 2 different countries at least invited and from trips. And this last trip we were in line for I don't know something to get back in the country or whatever, and I met a new friend there. And when I get to my family and friends, they're like, "Oh, where's your new friend from?" And I said, "Oh, he's from Cambodia." And I have this whole story, like his whole life story. And they're like, "Oh, are we going there next, or is he coming to the wedding? Like, what's happening?" I'm like, "Come on."
That's the norm. That is norm for every Kathy Castle trip.
I like
Yeah.
that.
And I get excited if I talk to one stranger in the elevator at Ocean City.
We're all
Yeah.
different things.
You know, it's sad, Jay. The other night, the Orioles were on. What night were that? What was their first game? Was it
Thursday.
It was Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I was or what I was doing, but apparently I wasn't watching it. So I have to hear from Matt from Australia about what the Orioles were doing. For the opening, I was like, this is pretty sad when I have my friend from Australia that I've also converted into an Oriole fan, and I'm pretty sure he's a Ravens fan now. And yeah, telling me what's going on.
So speaking of relationships, we're gonna
Yeah.
Catherine. Let's introduce yourself to our listeners and tell everybody what you're all about.
Sure. So I'm Katharine Petzold, and I am a couple psychotherapist out of Easton, Maryland. I use pronouns she, her, and I am, as part of my introduction, I'm in a relationship, I'm in a marriage, and that's part of what got me really interested in this work is to understand how relationships work, how people can grow together and find ways to communicate with one another, especially when they're different than one another. So yeah, I'm in private practice right across from Tidewater Inn, and I see couples both in traditional therapy settings, and then I also do a 2-day relationship workshop called the Relationship Boot Camp that
Nice.
uses a model called relational life therapy. A guy named Terry Real invented that. And then I also do couples intensives where I meet with one couple for a full day or for 2 full days.
Wow, that sounds really neat. I wasn't even aware you were doing that locally. That's great.
Yeah.
And well, you can tell more about your business. about the business that you have too. I want you to plug that at the end as
Yeah, I
well.
love it. It's I feel really grateful. I have a lot of meaning and purpose in my work. I think to
Mm.
me, I call myself a connection junkie. I love connecting, and being able to help other people when they're struggling to connect with their partner, when they're making assumptions about one another, when they are having the very natural part of relationships, which are ruptures,
Mhm.
how to repair. A lot of people, Jay, when we were talking earlier, you said something about there's no manual, or maybe that was you, Kathy. And
That's what I mean.
yeah, and so my husband and I, we joked about that when we brought our first baby home. Like, we had more information from an Apple iPhone than we did for how to take care of this child. And it's the same thing with relationships. We learn from, no matter how wonderful our parents are, to human beings, and they can love us, and um, they can be wonderful in all sorts of ways, and they're human. And so we grow up with a certain model of what relationship looks like, and then we meet up with someone who has a different model of what relationship looks like, and then you two try to kind of sort out, what does our relationship look like. And so the workshop is exciting because it kind of gives people a broad overview of this model of, how do we make repair, how do we move through the perpetual cycle of harmony, disharmony, and then deeper harmony. But in order to move through that, there has to be a repair piece. Harmony, disharmony, repair, harmony. Many people go harmony, disharmony. Let's not talk about it for a while. Oh, I'm sure we'll be fine. Okay, we're harmonious ish. Disharmony. Oh, remember that last time we fought too? Now you've gotten a cumulative effect. Okay, now we're going to push that under the rug. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to pretend like it didn't happen, or we're not going to repair from it. And then you get into dishonest harmony, where it's like nobody's fighting, or nobody's hurting each other, but this sure doesn't feel good. This sure doesn't feel like connection. And so part of the work, both in the workshops and in therapy, is really helping people learn how to do that repair process, which is tricky. And I can say more about that, but I want to leave space for any questions. And
I know I'm laughing a little bit here because I have been married for, this year will be 33 years in June. But I remember back in the day when we'd have our spats, Marty would say, "How come you got to bring up something that we fought about like last year, whatever?" And I'm like, "Cause I'm not done with it."
yeah,
He's like, "You're bringing up stuff from 3 fights ago." I'm like, "I'm not done with any of it, and I'm gonna keep bringing it up till I'm done with it." I can really laugh at the past,
yeah,
but you do have to learn. I know Jay probably has 562 questions, and I probably got 1,025. But yeah, I always let Jay start.
So, you know, Eastern Shore Talk is self care based, and like you and I, kind of Catherine spoke a little bit before we came on recording about the communication aspect of
Mm.
relationships, and when you said, in that cycle, don't talk about it, and then get back to the and I know, and I'm a why person. I want to know why. I'm a analytical, like in my mind, why person, and the self care thing to me kind of connects, and we spoke about this before we came on, in the feeling strong enough about yourself to be willing to have that conversation and be willing to say difficult things, and be willing to hear back difficult things. And um, this is probably a softball question, but like, how important is honest communication in that process?
yeah. Well, I heard a couple questions. I heard the why question, and then how important is honest communication. Can I speak to the why
Yep.
first?
Hmm.
Jay
So,
likes to double questions up. So
so what is wild is that we tend to choose a partner that kicks up a similar dynamic to the dynamic that we had with one of our attachment figures, but enough different that we think we have a chance at a different outcome. And so why do we choose that? I think, there's some research around kind of unconsciously, how subconsciously, how we choose partners that we think we might be able to heal some dynamic with. Um, and the tricky part is that before we heal it, we get into that dynamic with each other. So it can it there's no, I mean, we talked a little bit about social media earlier, and in our world there's so much focus on harmony, and you're happily ever after, and you get married, and then it's over, then whatever. It's like we talk about love as it starts with love without knowledge, and then you wake up next to each other and it's knowledge without love. And then the third stage is knowledge and love. And so um oh, I got lost in my own train of thought, but we have all this focus on harmony, and really my belief and the belief of the modality that I practice is that disharmony is actually what brings us to a deeper connection, because disharmony is when we allow ourselves to be seen, when we do the repair process, to be vulnerable, to attend to one another's wounds and experiences. And oftentimes, whatever kind of adaptations that we grew up with, whatever kind of wounds that we grew up with, we choose a partner, and the wounds of the marriage or the partnership overlay the wounds of the family. So it's kind of the same spot that's being touched. And so uh, the repair process is so beautiful in those moments, because you are being seen in those moments. So overemphasis on harmony and disharmony is really what I believe brings us closer. And then you said, how important is honest communication? So I feel like that's a little bit of a trick question, because some people's honest communication is like, I just tell it like it is. I'm just blunt. That's just like who I am. You can count on me to tell you when your hair looks ugly today. Like, okay, so when we go out to eat with our partner, we might have like 20 different thoughts. And one might be, oh, that joke was so funny. Oh, they look awfully old tonight. Oh, oh my gosh, their breath smells so, whatever. We do not have to tell each other every thought that passes through our head.
Right.
So it's honesty with some containment. So how can we be honest in a way that also keeps in mind how this is going to land for the other person?
Right.
That doesn't mean we don't say something that's hard, but we're thoughtful about it. Did that
Yeah.
answer your question?
Yeah. And it was and once you started explaining it, I realized how broad the question was. I was thinking more like in the getting to know phase. In other words, let's have honest
Oh,
conversation. Yeah, that yes, but also okay, we're in this cycle where things are in disharmony. Let's have an honest conversation from both parties about maybe why that is.
yeah.
I should have been more specific
Beautiful.
about where I was coming from. Yeah,
Yeah. So Jay, from the way that you talk and from the conversations that we've had, you've clearly done so much work on yourself. And
and a lot more to go.
oh my gosh, it's never ending. Me too. And um, part of the part of couples therapy is waking people up to how they show up in relationships. So it's not that people aren't smart and they don't know how to communicate. People can read a book, people can follow a worksheet, etc. But when you are in your whoosh, when you are activated, you do not care about communicating. You care about protecting yourself, and all of a sudden your partner is the enemy. And so being aware of what happens for you when you go there. So when there's that disharmony and you notice, oh my gosh, this is a hard part for me. I get really reactive around this kind of stuff. Um, I have compassion for myself around it. I have compassion for my partner around the places that they are tender. And so I'm a good person. I'm enough and I matter, and I'm accountable to my actions. And so um, I know there have been people who, when they're first dating, do this thing where they say, like, here are the parts of me that are really hard to deal with. And they kind of list them off, bam, bam, bam. And I'm one of those people who's done that. I know um, there's been so much success in their relationship. So I think, yeah, knowing yourself, knowing where your
Roll out the scroll, Jay. For the
where your hard spots are can be really useful in the relationship for you to know, so that you know, oh, this is coming near that spot. I might have a reaction, and then for your partner to know this part is really hard for me and I'm working on it, and you know, here's how, and that you two can be as generous as possible with each other around those places that are different for everyone. What's going to land for you is going to land for someone else in a different way, depending on their personal experience.
I already feel like this podcast could have like 5 parts.
What
There's
would you
there's
name
so
each
much.
of them?
Yeah, I probably could do that. I really could do that. Yeah, because I think relationships are in such different phases. You have people that are trying to date, or dating young, dating older, second marriages or relationship. There's so many different phases of it, and I have a flood of things just going through my mind, thinking about people that I know that have struggled, or there's a gazillion things, the couples that struggle when the kids leave and now it's just the two of them again, or the couples that struggle because their more senior years are not what they thought, right? Like maybe somebody's immobile because of a chronic health problem, or they really thought they'd be traveling and they're not. There's so many different aspects of relationships. I mean, we could just talk for days, which you do. That's why you do this work.
Hopefully there's some interaction. Hopefully I'm not.
She picks something, she'll never have any run out of stuff to talk about. Yeah.
So in my overwhelmed mind now that wants to plan it all out.
Now you know how I feel all day, every day.
I have such compassion for you at this moment. But I'm like, in the time we have, what's like the cheat code? What can we share with the listeners? And clearly put her on the list, the return list. We got to have you back if you put up.
For sure.
But what's the cheat code? Like, what's the cheat code? What's the secret? We're all looking, for the secret to success.
And I have a once you're done with that one, I have a related sort of question that's kind of an offshoot from that. Once you're done that,
Catherine, I told you we're going to be like,
I love it. Curiosity is a cheat code, really. I think what I would say to that is there is no cheat code. And I know it sucks.
I was trying to get out of the manual. I know there's not a manual, but there's got to be a 1-page cheat code.
So I think that idea ends up being so harmful to people. Not like you're harming people, but it's the social media idea that this is like, all you need to do is this.
And you'll step out.
And so even like when I've been doing the boot camp, which is that 2-day relationship workshop, there's so much, marketing suggestions and things like that. Like, this will transform your relationship and da-da-da-da. And there are people whose relationship it has transformed. And there's no magic. This is valuable information that will help you on your way as a human being in your relationship. I think it's really important. I think it's really useful, valuable, helpful. Will you be cured of all the things that are hard for you? No. There is no world in which there is not relationship with disharmony. And what it is what you were describing earlier, Cathy, is then the disharmony, the ruptures are less frequent. They're less long. We're able to get back to connection faster, and it's more in the here and now. So because we've learned to repair all those ruptures that come, that are just a part of life, we now, when we have a rupture, it's about now and not the 25 years in the past of things that have happened that have hurt my feelings.
I can tell you one thing, for like, if I'm just talking about me personally in my own marriage, that I would say was really helpful to us, because we came in, Marty and I are very different. Like, on the scale, like Jay said, I'm on one end, Marty's on the introvert other end, and I'm pulling him along, or he's settling me down, right? But It wasn't until we went to, we worked together, we went to school together, that's how we met, but we went to graduate school together. And for 3.5 years, we drove Easton to Baltimore's what? An hour and 15, hour and 20 each way. We never turned the radio on. And we talked. And that's probably, and we were already married. We were 2-3 years into marriage. But that's when we grew up, and that's when we figured stuff out.
Yeah.
It wasn't those first 2 years because we were probably ready to kill each other. But actively listening, like, who are you? What are you about? What makes you tick? What do you believe in? What makes you mad? Like, we got to learn each other. And that sounds so stupid probably because we dated. You think you get to learn each other there, but apparently we didn't. We just had fun. And then we got married and, you do all the things that you're supposed to do. And then now what?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying everybody's got to drive for 3 hours 3 times a week, but I would say really sitting down and listening to who your person is.
Yeah.
Who are they? And maybe it changes. Maybe who they were at 25 is not who they are at 45 or whatever.
Beautiful.
Who are they?
Totally. And
there you go. That's my little tip.
Yeah, I love that. And to say, I say there's no cheat code in that. I know there are a lot of people who out there who think that they're doing it wrong because it's hard. And so wanting to just normalize.
And probably thinking they're a burden, wouldn't you say? Like,
yes,
I always say on this podcast, the whole negativity bias, that our brain is so conditioned to hook onto negativity and, throw positive off. Velcro to negativity, Teflon to positivity. So I think it's the same thing with a relationship. We want to focus on what's the negative about that, the negative about me, the negative about you.
Right. Our brain is scanning 4 times per second for danger.
Probably even more. Would you think it's more now than it ever used to be, given all the boom, boom, boom info?
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be an interesting experiment to find out with all of the fast moving.
Much more stimulation now. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
But so our brain is moving. We register danger in 1/8 to 1/12 of a second. And that's when we're in our whoosh. And we register something positive. It takes much longer to register because we don't.
Well, that's
need
the average person,
survival. Right? Yes.
Ooh, I couldn't even imagine what mine was.
Well, and so there are certainly tools. So there are. You talked a little bit about imago dialogue, which is when you are practicing listening and mirroring back to the person what you heard, which is a way to slow down a conversation because speed is typically the enemy. Escalation, just
I'm going to one-up you kind of thing.
And so slowing things down, and the imago dialogue helps slow it down, and it helps you stop focusing on what's in your batting cage that you're going to defend and get them back on and all that kind of stuff, because now you have to listen well enough that you can mirror back to them what you've heard.
So if somebody's listening to this and saying, what is that word that I've never heard of in my life? Okay, how I described it was, with not the good professional term, was I had to take a class. Marty and I took a class together. And I said, one of the biggest things that I learned in that class is we were role playing. They picked a married couple to role play, go figure, and made up a fake fight. And we did it several times. They use this all the time. But I found it difficult in that role playing. And I'm sure in my life, I was trying to always run the conversation. Imagine that, Jay, right? That it was hard to listen and not be thinking about what I was going to say next, which I still would say that's a challenge because you don't want to forget what we're going to fire back at, right? But it's so important to hear it. It's hard to do.
And that there is a speaker and a listener role, and you can't both go at the same time.
And it probably happens a lot.
Yeah. And another kind of cheat sheet is there's no such thing as objective reality. The relational answer to who's right is who cares. So if you're in a restaurant and one person says, oh, I can't believe you were yelling at the waiter. No, I wasn't. I was speaking emphatically. No, you were yelling. No, I was speaking emphatically. Then you're sitting there going, okay, so are we going to get an audiologist? Are we going to, how do we determine whether this was emphatic or yelling? Who cares?
That's a very good statement. I like that. So what you're saying is, instead of saying who's right, so who cares who's right? Who cares? It doesn't matter.
We acknowledging we have two subjective experiences. So this happens a lot with couples around driving. Oh, why are you tailgating? I'm not tailgating. I've not, I've actually had my license for longer than you, and I've gotten in less accidents. Well, I don't know how. It's just because you've driven less. I've had more mileage, right? And it's kind of a ridiculous conversation where you get into trying to prove who's the better driver. It doesn't matter. One of you would like more room. So here's your successful approach. Hey, honey, for whatever reason, right or wrong, I am uncomfortable with how close you are to that car. Would you mind leaving some extra space? Now your honey is going to say, yeah, sure.
No, you know what my honey would say? He'd say, "You're being very sarcastic right now."
My first thought was, Kathy does not talk like that.
So you funnel it through your
I can't
voice.
even say what I would probably say because this is, a PG show. But yeah, if I said, Marty,
Well,
so you need to
Hey,
take
where's Kathy? What have you done with my wife?
yeah, we need the smart aleck version.
yeah,
What is
yeah,
the sarcastic person? You have to keep humor.
yeah, for sure.
So, Catherine, I like earlier.
For your subjective experience without saying like, I hold the truth, the capital T
No,
truth on how far is too close. And
here's what I would say. You know what I would say? This is for real. I would be like, for the love of God, will you stop tailgating that person? I need to get to the next destination. I do not want to die today. That's what I would probably say.
and maybe
real.
that works for your marriage. That's totally fine.
And then
They're still together.
Yeah.
Marty's probably like, God darn, Kathy. As he's at 10 and 2.
Works is a relative term that Kathy and Marty would describe differently in that situation.
That's so funny. But we can laugh about it. We can laugh at the comments that I say.
That's great. And that's probably what comes from
You gotta have good
3 years of having gone through it in all sorts of different ways. And then you kind of land in a place where she can have a different opinion about driving, and I don't have to take it personally as it means that I am a bad driver and then defend my character.
Well, you just said another good point, right? Is how do you get to, that's another important thing, I guess, because we can't change everything about ourselves. I mean, I do have sarcasm as part of my personality. Love it, hate it. I have to tell my children that if I'm not sarcastic, I'm probably gonna be homicidal. So I need to like do something so I don't, touch people and harm them. So, some things are part of our personality, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's like how do we, just like Jay, as much as I want him to be the thrum in the middle of a social situation, let's have the best time. He's not. That's who he is, and I have to respect that. But how to, I guess it's another thing to remember is how to not take things personal, because I know I do it. I take things personal all the time, even though I know I have to really check myself.
Yeah, it's hard. Having that psychological boundary is really hard. This person can have a
Catherine,
different preference. It doesn't mean I'm bad. It's when I'm bad and now I have to defend myself, and then here we go in a loop.
Yeah,
I liked how earlier you were talking about how there's always going to be disharmony, and that kind of crosses over to what Kathy and I have been talking about with self care and why self care in general is so important. Because, and I like to say, life is really about dealing with the times when we don't get our way, dealing with the stuff that's going wrong. The better we deal with that, and that self care is a tool in kind of helping with that. So that leads me to my the Jay Watson special. My two-pronged question
Watson special
is how important is our relationship with ourselves in a coupled relationship, and part two is do how important is it that both parties really want to resolve whatever disharmony they're having for it to be resolved.
Yeah, beautiful. So very important. Our relationship with ourselves. The more self-esteem that we have on board, the more both containing and protective boundaries that we have on board, the more that our partner can be distressed with us and we can tolerate it. So you kind of alluded to what I would call, like in the terms of the therapist, distress tolerance. So learning how to tolerate that sometimes someone's mad at you.
Yep.
So is that where the self care comes? Is that what you would say, or we're talking about self care? That's where you say input it, right? Is that where you would input? So nobody's going to get along all the time. I mean, life is just not like that.
Right.
Um, so when this happens, what would you say? Would you suggest that somebody has this little bag of tricks that they can do when they're feeling like that? Like, I'll be honest, when I live in a house, there's literally 5 men in this house. There's 5 grown men over the age of 18 in this house. So I used to go get in my minivan when I thought I was cool in it. I know I'm not, but in my minivan, and I'd turn on some 80s music and I'd leave them. Like, I showed you. I just left all y'all. I'm going to go take a ride. And then nobody would call and say, "Are you good?" So that started to be not effective. But anyway, like, what is your, we all need a bag of tricks of how to chill it before we blow,
Yeah.
even in those relationships, I guess.
I think one of the things that I think of around self care that I really love um, is is thinking about how you're talking to yourself. So when
Mm-hmm.
someone say my self esteem is dependent on other people liking me, right?
Oh
I've
yeah.
outsourced my self esteem, and so when my husband's mad at me,
I don't like myself.
I've tanked. My self esteem has tanked, and
Mm-hmm.
so where did I learn that I'm as valuable as what someone else thinks about me? How old was I when I learned that? And how can I speak to that part from the part of me
Mm-hmm.
that knows that I am valuable?
Jay, that's you, buddy. Jay's learned that lesson. He's learned that.
Yeah, beautiful. It's
Um,
what have you, is that like, I'm curious to know, Jay, and I don't know if you want to speak to it, but
Oh yeah,
say more
absolutely.
about you, what Kathy is referring to.
Well, I think it's been a multi-pronged process for me. The very first step was me saying the words out loud that I had been sexually abused as a child. That was kind of relieving the pressure. So now I didn't have all this junk in my head holding me back from containing the good stuff in there. So I
Mm,
released that, and yet it wasn't an overnight thing, but and each progressive time I would say the words out loud, it got a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. That was a big step. Finding the Lord was the ultimate step for me because for someone like me who didn't really have a familial foundation, to know that my value was being a child of God
mm,
is
mm,
like, what else do I possibly need?
mm.
Doesn't mean that I don't have days or moments that I,
Of
have
course.
them down or whatever. Of course, and it's always going to be that way. So much self reflection, taking the time on myself for myself, and it's not, that's that's kind of where a schism I think can develop because we are conditioned to be social people and we're conditioned by society and our social circle to be in a relationship. So we're driven by that in an unhealthy way, but there's also that desire to have to find ourselves. And I don't think we can do a very good job at the latter if we're so concentrated on the former. Um, there has to be a logical step to
Hmm.
get to that point. Um, and a million failed relationships, and I've one day just sat down in myself and said, "Wait a minute. Yes, those people may not have been the right person for me. Why did I choose them? What's my part in my unhappiness?" And once I threw my ego out the window and said, "Okay, even if they weren't the right person, the right fit, I can't control that part of the equation. I have 100% control over what I've been doing to choose how I move forward. And now what?" I kept asking myself, now what? What's my part in my unhappiness? Because I'm the only one that can fix it. My choices got me here. My choices will get me to where I want to be. So it's been a bunch of a lot of things, a lot of self care, and a lot of time, not just reflecting on how trauma had affected me and the unhealthy choices I made, but who am I? Like, who am I? And getting familiar and loving that person. And again, finding the Lord was kind of the final step in, um, identity and self. And I like to, I have this thing. It's just kind of a layman's thing. I call the progression of self, where it's self love leads to self care. Self care leads to making healthier choices, hopefully gets to a healthier, peaceful life that we all kind of are thriving to do. So it's yeah, it's all those things, and it's been many. I probably started the real process at 40, so it's been almost 18 years of process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, lots of trial and error, and when you're figuring out who you are, you're trying different things to find out who you are. So there's going to be trial and error. It's not a straight line. There's exit ramps and get back on the highway, and hills and valleys, and
Break down on the side of the road.
yeah, flat tires, and
Yeah.
sometimes you get souped up and you make a discovery and you jet 10 steps ahead over seemingly overnight. It's a lot. It's just a lot. I don't mean to scare people off, be like, "Whoa, Jay, I don't want to have to go through all that to get better." But you kind of do. Your path will be different, and your path will be a different timeline. But it's work.
I think it's worth mentioning again too, Catherine. You were talking about. I think this is what you said. I hope I'm not putting words into your mouth, but when people are having a disharmony, I guess you call it, disagreement, whatever, that somebody, and I'm going to guess a lot of times it's the females, um, feel really bad about it and maybe think bad of themselves. Like you're talking about the self-esteem. And I think I can think back to younger days or earlier in my relationship, with my husband is, you know, your mind just taking you to the extreme. So if this is happening, then everything's bad,
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to make it? I can remember being like that early, when I was younger. And of course, now it's just kind of silly to think for me. Like, I don't think that way anymore. But, I would imagine that some of that happens with relationships, right? Like there's somebody, if things aren't going well, that they are fearful maybe their significant other will look somewhere else, or they're not going to be interested anymore, or the marriage is failing. I would,
Yeah,
is that
a
you
fear of
see what
kind
I
of
mean?
abandonment. And
Yeah,
so there's this
yeah.
feeling of hunger. I have to be connected to you. And now you're mad at me. And so, how do I connect to you? So either I'm going to use a great strategy of getting angry and pursuing you, which is so inviting of connection, because I need to maintain the connection for my survival, or I'm going to leave and hope that you're going to come after me. I'm going to kind of like try all of these different strategies to maintain that connection because it's unsafe for us to be in rupture. And so it's part of the distress tolerance that you were talking about, Jen,
Mm,
of like, how can I know that we're going to disagree about stuff? There's going to be things I do that are going to hurt my husband's feelings, and things that he does that are going to hurt my feelings, some of which will be totally by accident, and some of which may not be. And how do we weather that in ways that are respectful of one another and don't damage either of us as human beings, but rather,
is that where you're talking about the repair? Would that be the next phase in that? Like
yeah,
you're talking. I love this whole process that you're talking about, the disharmony and then the repair. So I think we should talk about repair, but I like how we've kind of said that there's going to be discord. It's just natural. I
yeah,
mean, you can't be with somebody that, and then recognizing your own part, recognizing that it's not the end of the world, recognizing the little self-care that you might need to just not explode in the moment, and then what do we need to do to repair this?
yeah. And just to speak to Jay's point about kind of working on yourself. So there are
Mm,
some conditions we call preconditions to couples therapy being indicated. So if someone has an active addiction, that would be
mm,
contraindicated for a couples therapy. You just can't do that work. If
Right.
someone is working on
good
recovery,
point.
it's 6 months of sobriety before you enter into that work, because sobriety
I
is
didn't
so
even know that.
work.
That's a good point
Yeah, sobriety, you need all of everything going
to
into
work.
all the resources going into that. And so to then try to deal with the stuff that couples work kicks up in you, um,
Wow.
it's just,
Don't they say that? Don't a lot of places say for recovery not to be in a relationship for a year, your first year? I mean, it might vary, but isn't there like a, you
I
know,
haven't heard any of that, but it doesn't mean it doesn't
yeah,
exist.
I don't know, quite possible. The
Mhm.
problem is people who are already in relationships.
yeah, of course, yeah.
And then the two others, if you have some sort of mental health diagnosis, is not being treated.
That's
So
true. Yes. To get
ADHD,
put your energy into getting stable
yeah,
in whatever
yeah,
is happening to you before you work on then your relationship with
yeah,
other people. And it makes sense, right?
yeah. And then people who are in an active affair. So those are kind of the three preconditions to couples work being. Um, it's you don't have the second
Workable.
person
Yeah.
available.
Yeah.
Really, you don't have the person available to do the work. Um, but
Mm.
Kathy, and that it's also okay that we enter into relationships imperfect, and there's no point that we reach in our lives where we are finished. There is always work. There's always those whooshes that come up. Always that activation. It's just that we've learned to manage it better and better, and hopefully, if we've had the chance and to be able to work on it and to have the courage to work on it. Um, and your question was about repair, Kathy, and I can't remember what it was. I'm sorry. Can you say it again?
Yeah, no, I'm just curious then what's the next phase, the repair phase. I'm curious
Okay.
about the,
Yeah.
yeah, just the repair phase.
So there's a tool that RLT, Relational Life Therapy, uses called the feedback wheel, and it's 4 steps. And we teach this in the workshop and throughout therapy. And first is what I experienced. So what I experienced was you sighed when I said I wanted to go to book club tonight. And then the second step is the story I made up about this
Mm-hmm.
is that you think I shouldn't go to book club and I'm a bad person for trying to take time off from
Right.
being
Yes, I like this.
with the kids or being at home or whatever. Um, and that I haven't earned it somehow, or I'm a bad person.
Yep.
Um, how I feel about this is shame, um, anger, sad.
Guilt,
Say that
all of
again.
it.
Yeah,
Guilt
guilt. Yep,
on the story you made up.
yep. And then my request from you is, can you reassure me that that's not what you're thinking, or if that is what you're thinking, can we talk about it? Um, what is my request that I can ask for you right now? Not my request for the future is that you don't sigh, because they can't do that right now. So it's what is my request right now? What would be a repair right now that would get me back in connection with you?
This is really good. I can remember listening to a Brene Brown podcast, and you might remember this, Catherine. I don't know. I can't even remember which one it was, but she's so funny. I love her scenarios.
Yeah.
But she was talking about, and I can relate to this completely. She was talking about she came into her home, dishes piled high. Her husband and the kids were watching some sporting event. Okay, that's my life every single day. Just saying. And she came in and she starts to clean and they're laughing and hooting and hollering. And so this is all. So what she experienced is she came in and she saw all that, right?
Mhm.
The story she made up was they don't care. They don't even want to help me. They're not helpful, right? How she felt about it. She was angry. She was resentful. And then she said where she failed, and I'm sure she said this differently than you did, but it's the same process. What she could have done is said, "Hey, would you guys mind helping me out?" Like she said, "I never asked. I never asked. I just stayed mad at the whole thing." So
Yeah.
yeah.
And checking out those stories that we make up. So I always say, like,
And we do make
yeah,
stories up all the time. I mean, I did a whole leadership thing on the stories we make up.
That's that self
And,
talk.
well, but think about this. I know I just cut you off, but you go by an accident. You don't know what happened, really, probably, unless you saw it, you were there. But we already said they're probably on their cell phone. They were speeding, they were whatever, and then we leave and we got a whole story about what happened because we like to make stories up.
mm-hmm.
our brain makes stories up
We're
all the time.
pattern seeking machines. Our brains are like trying to make sense of the world. And so we make sense of it, but none of us are coming fresh into a relationship. We're all coming with all of the sense that we made of our lives up until now, all of the if this, then that. And
Mhm.
oftentimes those are the logic of a kid. And a kid thinks everything is about them. That's developmentally appropriate. They have not, their prefrontal cortex has not finished growing. They fall, they look to the grown up and say, like, did that hurt? How badly did that hurt? What's your reaction going to be? Because that will be how I do my reaction. So as a kid, everything is our fault, everything is about us. And our reasoning brain doesn't work. Like when I was pregnant, I remember a kid asking me if I had swallowed a baby because there was a big bump in my stomach. Right? That makes sense. So as kids, we come up with these things that, well, I know that um, when I do this, it maximizes my attachment to this person. And when I do this, when I'm, for a lot of women, it can be when I'm really helpful, then my parents are happy with me. And so I learned to be really helpful. And if the person I'm with doesn't respond to me in a way that says, like, good job doing all that work, then I start feeling, resentful, or make up stories about how they just expect me to do everything, like Brene Brown talking about the dishes.
Yeah.
So we all come in with our own set of stories around what different behavior means and how we've coded it.
Well, I know I have a friend who said this is an example of this too. She said when she was younger, when her dad would come home and he was kind of a cranky guy, when her siblings would hear the garage door go up, if they were just sitting on a couch or reading a magazine, they quick got up and they acted busy because the dad would make a comment and they would feel like they were, I'm probably embellishing the story a little bit, but maybe that they're being lazy or not helpful. So she said what she did was brought that into her marriage. So when her husband came up, she would be like, I gotta do something because he's home. And she said eventually they had this conversation where he's like, I could care less.
Yeah.
Read a book, sit on the couch. That is not about me. But she just brought it over.
Yeah.
It became an issue that she didn't even know she did it until she spent some time thinking about it.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful that she checked in with her husband about it, that she checked in. Is this what you're thinking?
Yeah.
That's
So,
healing. Oh, you mean I don't need to look like I'm doing something? I'm allowed to sleep in front of people? Oh my gosh.
Right.
so Catherine, before we switch gears for the last segment, I just got one real
We
quick.
need parts 3, 4, and 5. I'm telling you, we talk to her all day long.
I got a real quick question, or actually, it's kind of an analogy, um, kind of leaning back to my personal training days. Um, because with the process of building a muscle, you're actually initially breaking down the muscle, and it has to
Mhm.
repair in order to grow stronger, to be grow the muscle. Is the hope and goal as a couple continually go through disharmony is that each time we go through there, we maybe get a little bit better and we learn a little bit more about how to handle it. So you're kind of building the relationship muscle, or
Totally.
the disharmony muscle, kind of each time we go through the
The
continuous.
repair. You're building
Yeah,
how to repair. You're building
yeah,
the distress tolerance. You're building the I'm enough and I matter. Like one of the things that you said is where it started for me was with God and believing that I was lovable, that
yes,
I was valuable. And when we believe that we're valuable, then we can start to tune into someone else's experience when we're not having to sit there and protect our own experience. So
right.
yes, the more you practice doing that, the easier it becomes. All of those skills, both the hard concrete skills, like the tools that I've talked a little bit about, and there's many more,
Mhm.
and the repeated over and over again part that has to remind you in those moments that you're enough, that you matter, that you don't have to go into defense or retaliation or withdrawal or whatever kind of losing strategy you might use.
And you probably in the continually going through that process, you probably that's probably a really good tool in getting to know your partner a little bit better than you really even if you've been together for a while. It's just because learning how to fight, argue, how to get through it is pretty significant. That's kind of the whole gist of what you talk about.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You got it, Jay.
What if people wanted to
The
seek you
single man gets it.
out?
Hey, you got it. And um, you know, stuff like this can come up in other relationships too.
Oh
Yes. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
We make a lot of assumptions too.
Totally.
Well, I don't think our conversation is done. I think we need to. I think
No.
we talk to you more. But if people wanted to seek you out, what's like the name of your business? Do you take insurance? Is it self pay? I'd be wanting to promote your business and give people information about you.
Yeah, my website is klptherapy.com. K is in kitchen, L love. P Paul. not as exciting. klptherapy.com. And I see clients. I do 80-minute sessions. It's self-pay only. I do see some individual insurance clients, but I primarily see couples. And then where I really recommend people get started is the boot camp that I do. And I do that twice a year with a colleague named Risa Ganell, who is out of Columbia. And we do it in Annapolis. Our
Oh
next one
wow!
is our next one is in a week this weekend, April 5th and 6th, but it's sold out. So
Oh
our
wow!
one following that is September 20th and 21st. And that I think is a really good bang for your buck because you get the context and the framework of what are we going for? How do we think about this? What are we feeding kind of our content? We all have content and then we have a process. The process is the
Mhm.
dynamic, content is whatever's happening in du jour, that thing, today it's about the dishwasher. Tomorrow it's about
Mhm.
whatever. And here's the same process that we
Right.
go through. So this gives a really great way of understanding the model, the context of the model, the tools. You get some role play practicing in. It's not, people aren't airing their dirty laundry. It's more of an educational
Mhm.
psychoeducation, learning about your own adoptive child, thinking about that. And
Sounds like a healthy thing. This is a good,
yeah,
healthy
I love it.
change.
I love it. And then it jump starts any work that you're going to do afterwards. Now you have a foundation that has a lot, that's a lot more hefty and built
And what's a full class? How many couples do you take?
24. 24 people. So 12 couples is the
Okay.
maximum that we take. It's open to individuals and couples. So
Okay.
individuals who want to learn more about how they relate to people, if they're curious about
Yeah.
I want to think about my last relationship in this. I want to think about my future relationships. What am I bringing to the table? How can I
I think this should be like a high school class. I think everybody should have to have this.
The Terry Real, who does this model, is trying to get it into high schools. I
Uh,
agree because the quality of our intimate relationships predicts our longevity. Like this
yeah.
is really
And
important stuff.
we don't know how to talk to people, and it's getting worse.
Mhm.
You know, people are resentful and
Disconnected.
angry and disconnected. I mean, we need to learn. We need to learn. So that's great. It's good to hear that somebody's trying to.
Yeah, my favorite quote from the last one was a participant who said something like, "These are the foundational tools that all humans need before interacting with others."
There
Like,
you go.
yeah,
Sounds
because we're
like
flying
it, right?
blind. A lot of us are flying blind in this, and so it really.
Have you ever thought of a virtual class?
Yes, I prefer
Mhm.
in person. I love the
Yeah.
connection
Oh
of it.
yeah.
But there
Yeah.
are people who do these boot camps, so it's
Mhm.
people do it all over the U.S.
Oh, okay.
So there are other boot camps where people do it virtually, and we offer scholarship and sliding scale slots in ours, and there's a foundation called the Relational Life Foundation, and they offer sliding scale and scholarship spots for both the couples therapy and the boot camps.
Awesome. So before we get out of here, as usual, Kathy, we're gonna talk about what we've been watching lately. So, Catherine, have you been watching anything lately that you really enjoyed? TV, streaming, movies, anything? Even if it's something,
I'm kind of
you
into
know.
the show Tracker.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know that one?
Yep. I
Yeah.
do. He was on. What show was he on before? He was on This Is Us before.
Oh, I don't know. I can't watch anything that's too addictive or I will ruin my life trying to find out what happens. So
Yeah,
Tracker works for me because an episode is dropped every week. So it like automatically helps me um
yeah, I've
just be
seen
a
that. I like
reasonable
that.
human being
Yeah,
around it.
and he's kind of like he lives out of a camper basically. He goes
Yeah,
he finds missing people all over the country. So he's
totally.
driving around Kathy in a camper like all over the place, and it seems to be out west for the most part.
So
Um,
this would be my retirement job, is what you're saying.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't know about the tracking people down. Well, you would probably be really good at tracking groups of people down.
All those people skills put to good
It's
use.
either that or I'm going to go work with Catherine and solve people's relationship problems. I'm either tracking or getting people back together. I don't know.
I like it.
What about you, Kath? Watch anything
Not-
lately?
I've been watching a baseball field. I haven't. I mean, I did watch some of Idol last night. Yeah, I just
Well,
haven't.
Idol's on again tonight. They're doing the Hollywood part tonight. So real quick, Friday I went and watched A Working Man with Jason Statham, and it's a typical, shoot 'em up, bang bang, Jason Statham movie. But what's interesting is one of the producers on this is Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't heard of it.
So it was solid. It was a solid Jason Statham kind of movie. But I tell you what, I did watch, and it's brand new to Netflix.
I have no idea who he's talking about. But anyway,
I know. I'm with you.
brand new. Go Netflix.
Brand new to Netflix. It's a movie called The Life List, and it's so good. It's about a family, and the mother is played by she was on Friday Night Lights. I can't think of her name, but anyway,
Connie Britton.
Connie Britton. Yes, exactly. She
Guys,
I feel like I should know all this stuff. I don't know if I want to cop to knowing all of this.
she has two sons and a daughter, and the daughter is kind of one of those. She hasn't figured herself out, and Connie Britton's character passes away, and before she passes away, she leaves these DVDs for her daughter to watch, and at her will, they read the will, and the sons get these certain things, and the daughter had been working with the mother in their family business, and was in line to like take over the business prior to the mother's passing, so she ends up giving the business to a daughter-in-law, and the daughter's like dumbfounded, and the lawyer says, well, here she's giving you these DVDs to watch, so she's got to go through these processes of figuring herself out with each DVD, and every time she passes the first, it's almost like a scavenger hunt. She passes the one, she gets the next DVD. She passes that one, gets the next DVD. There's all these things, and it's just really cool to kind of watch, like, the sons are like jealous because they didn't get DVDs, but yet they got given all these good things. But the daughter's like didn't get left anything, but she's trying to figure herself out, and it's just a good family slash. The lead character kind of figures herself out along the way, and the mother's like, "Nope, I'm not leaving you anything until you get your life straight." And she's kind of giving her these DVDs to like go through these steps. It's kind of really well done.
Netflix needs to be aware of Jay Watson and his, grading.
Thumbs up, Jay.
But it gives a big thumbs up. It's so
Hello,
good.
Netflix. I have your guy. Come get him.
But it's Kathy. It's probably something that all your boys would watch. It's got enough of a cool, like it's younger vibes. Like the children of Connie Britton are 20s, 30-ish. So it's kind of got that younger, like hipper vibe that your boys would probably watch.
What's this? I just heard this morning. What's the Stranger Things thing that's coming out? There's something that's coming out like April 19th or something. I saw. Was it on Netflix? And is it related to Stranger Things? I mean, it is.
Is it the final
You got
season?
one over. I don't know anything about that.
No, there's something I just saw this morning that they're releasing like April 19th, and I don't know. I was hoping you would be all knowing, Jay, but
No, all I keep hearing about is how much everyone hates the Snow White actresses, Rachel Zegler, they just are just all over her.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, yeah.
all your kids didn't even watch the movie because of it,
Very few.
or your quote unquote daughter-in-laws didn't want to watch
Yeah,
it.
she was very nice to the original Snow White. Um, yeah,
The
I'm trying to
actress
find.
wasn't.
Yeah,
It's,
apparently
well, and the thing is, like, it was the writers
the
who
documentary. I'm
they
sorry.
changed kind of the gist of the Snow White story to make her feel like less dependent on having a relationship with a man. Although there is a love story in it, so I kind of don't really. I mean, maybe I'm a guy, so I just look at it different. But I don't really.
All right, I found what I was talking about with this Stranger Things thing. Stranger Things thing is what I keep calling it. Before you see Stranger Things, first shadow on Broadway. Is there a Broadway thing? Netflix wants you to see how it was made for West End. Huh.
Oh, if it's a Broadway thing, I have zero interest in that. Zero, less than
It's a
zero.
prequel. Huh.
Oh, well, what kind of prequel can there be? Because when the very first episode, they discovered unless it tells you how like that world came to be to begin with. I don't know. It's just I don't want anything to do with
Check
Broadway.
this out.
Nope, not me.
Know yourself.
Netflix announced an upcoming documentary covering First Shadow's production. I don't know.
Now there is one being released tonight on Netflix called Gone Girls. It's about
Was that a book?
Yeah, but
there was a movie called Gone Girl
Okay.
with Ben Affleck.
Emily Blunt,
Where
right?
the wife faked her own death and disappeared and then came back.
I don't
I
think I saw it.
thought.
It was really good. It was so good. Um,
I need a list.
but this is different. This is a true life documentary about missing kids and all.
Oh, really gone.
Yeah,
Real gone.
yeah.
I can't
Gee,
watch
that's
the real life
uplifting.
stuff. It's
I
too
know. I'm like,
upsetting.
hey, that's so uplifting.
Yeah, it's so upsetting.
Jeez.
I'm just a human psychology person. I'm just it's disturbing. Don't get me wrong, but it just intrigues me, like the whole why thing.
I know.
Why
That's like
people do what they do? Yeah, like
we were
everybody
like the
finds the answer somehow.
we
Well,
were
you're not
Jay
alone. They're so popular. So clearly,
and I were into the Gabby Petito
Oh
documentary.
yeah, that's so good too. So good.
So me and a couple of kids were all into it, and then a couple of my other kids are like, "That's weird. Why are you watching that?" I'm like, "I don't know, because I want to know."
This is the news. This stuff really happened. This is real stuff.
Like sometimes you just can't believe how horrible people really are. Like you got to see it for yourself because you just can't believe it.
All right. Well, anyway, Catherine, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to have
Yes.
part 2 at least, and have you back another time. And did you tell me you can or cannot make the expo on the 13th of September? Did we talk about that?
oh, I said, Jay, I'm supposed to know what I'm doing on the 13th of September in March of.
Well, I do that because everybody books their stuff up so quick. So I figured if I give it.
I hear you. I would love to come. I have to juggle several things with my many thousands of children, is what it feels like. It's only 3. And so I would love to come. So hopefully I can make it. Hopefully I
Okay,
can.
yeah, I'll be in touch, and we'll
Yeah.
because I do have a couple spots left. So
Okay.
I hear what you're saying though about the juggle. It's a real.
Well,
the juggle is a
The
struggle.
juggle is a struggle,
The
right?
juggle
The
struggle.
calendar is like Tetris, and you never
Yeah.
know what a month is going to be until you're in that month, and all the activities are out on the calendar and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and people say I'm a bad friend. I'm like, I know. I was like, I'm bad on the callback when the juggle is a struggle. Like you just, I'll come back. I'll come back to life, but
Yeah,
someday you're lost in the calendar, right?
exactly. And thank you guys so much for having me and for caring about self-care and relationships and spreading information out there to people. And I'm just, Jay, you shared your journey today, and you've shared it with me before when we met on the phone. And I'm just really respectful of how hard you've worked and what you've been through, and just send so much warmth and respect your way. And so I just
well,
want to be able to
the
say that.
podcast is kind of the next
Nice.
step in my work. It's now I'm paying it forward, and now I'm trying to serve in whatever little way that I can. So I appreciate the kind words.
That's a beautiful
Yeah,
thing.
very nice.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and catch us next time on Eastern Shore Talk. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Catherine, hold tight for a minute. Let the studio